I always believed that hip hop would be bigger than rock because hip hop has a way of crossing all these boundaries and reaching people and bringing together people that tend to think about the world in a similar way. You know, hip hop culture imparts a sort of way of thinking about things that I feel is unique.
We're back. It's episode number 47 of Innersleeve. I'm Cassius Morris, Frank Pavan and Joe Pacheco tapped in on the Zoom. What's up, guys?
What's happening, man?
What's happening, Cassius? How are you?
Hey, doing pretty good. You know, I wish we had some more positive news to start this episode off with. We're going to jump into a couple stories here in a second. But before we do, just wanted to let you guys know today's guest is the one and only Dave Mays. Now, if you're a hip hop fan, you definitely know who Dave Mays is. Of course, the co-founder of The Source magazine. He came on the show to talk to us about founding The Source, of course, about the notorious Source Awards that went all through the 90s, and also his brand new hip hop podcast network called Breakbeat. So we're going to have a bunch of information on that coming up. But first, we have a couple of news stories. And like I said, guys, not starting with the greatest story, unfortunately. We're going to zoom over to Houston, Texas. This past weekend, Travis Scott held his annual Astroworld Festival. And as we've seen here, many, many casualties at this event, guys. I mean, how do we even begin to describe this, Joe? I mean, how do we wrap our minds around this?
I have no idea. It's just extremely tragic and just very sad situation. And I know like he's been in this situation sort of before, like not in the sense of like there was death, but I know that he's been known to, you know, get the crowd going and get the crowd, you know, get extra people in the shows, overcrowded stuff. So it's maybe now he's kind of like went a little too far, you know?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a very, very sad one. Obviously, first and foremost, like your thoughts go towards the families of those of the victims and all those who passed away, because you don't typically ever want to expect that at a concert where people go to have fun and enjoyment. Yeah, I don't know. Just reading the big headlines, the fatalities, with the medical staff and police officers on the scene and all that. I guess just questions are how did some of these things get this out of hand? You know, you're hearing stories about people getting injected, or at least one person from the report with a lethal substance of some kind. I don't know. So many questions about how this went so poorly. I don't know. Well, that's kind of like the main question that runs into my mind.
Apparently there was I don't know if it was the chief of police or somebody in there who was friends with Travis, spoke to him before the show saying things were a little bit like not kosher, as we say, you know, like things were a little bit weird, you know.
On edge, or there was red flags.
Yeah, before the show started, kind of thing. He had mentioned it to him, you know. And what you said about that, the security officer feeling a prick on the neck and stuff. That's some scary stuff, man. Like, you know, You can't even go to a show. Already you were worried about a bottle falling on your head or somebody throwing stupid stuff, you know. Now you got to worry about like being, you know, poisoned or something. It's scary, man.
Yeah, it was already a very challenging environment, you know, and now to add more things to that, more fears of people getting back, it definitely doesn't help.
And like there's like apparently as many as 15 separate lawsuits have already been filed against him, you know, and stuff. And like, I mean, he came out, he made a few statements, right? Like I think he announced that he's giving refunds to all Astroworld attendees and also cover funeral costs of the victims, you know, and offering mental health counseling to those who attended the concert. I mean, like, I don't know, like a lot of people blame him for like not stopping the show because he did stop a few times, you know, and stuff like, but at the same time, I don't think, honestly, I don't think if the guy knew people were really like dying or how really bad it was, I think, you know, I don't know, I hope so.
Yeah, like his statement, or at least in an interview he had after the events, was that, you know, he said that if he would have known the severity of the condition that the people were in, he would have stopped it. And, you know, part of me, I believe that. I feel like, you know, there's decency in this world. There's good and bad. So I think, you know, if he knew how bad it was, I'm sure he would have stopped it. But that also ties into like another thought on this is, you know, many people, I think when the news first broke out, had his back in this. It's like, oh, how can Travis know? about all this. How could he be held responsible when the security or whoever on the site, should be handling this while he's running his show? But then there's a link out to a montage on YouTube of a bunch of different like mosh pit events and like the actual band frontman stopping the show and basically kicking the like I guess goons out of and I'm sure people would have liked to have seen that. Do we have a number count? Do we have an attendance count? Do we know how many people were here?
Over 50K.
Some people are even saying close to 100K. And I'm pretty sure that the venue was meant to hold less than 50.
And he's been known to like get people, even though it was sold out, to encourage people to keep coming and still attending the show. So I know like one person said, I had a constant pressure on my chest. I was being squeezed right from when he started performing his first song, and she's like, I looked at my boyfriend and said we had to get out of here. And some people reported that the dividers near the stage were actually blocking them from escaping. So it's like, there's so many little things, like in a situation like that.
It's true. Many inconsistencies as well. It's very strange. I think that some of the details in this story, if you believe them, I could probably sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. And the question really is, guys, how do you think this is going to affect the concert landscape coming up? Like, could this potentially challenge the way that general admission shows are even held? Or do you think that this is a one-time isolated incident and they'll deal with it and we'll move on?
I don't know.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
I think we're all wondering that right now.
Maybe.
I think general admission maybe should be maybe they should have a limit to how many people can be in one section at a time to avoid this kind of thing. So it's like general admission 1, 2. I don't know.
And you just said the landscape in general, right? You didn't just say, because this was an open air, like outdoor field, in an open field type of thing, concert. Yeah, I feel like if the attendance is over like 50,000 people, I'm sure maybe more measures should be researched and implemented. But if there's shows at arenas, everything's well ordered there, right? There's the main the main sitting area, the front sitting area on the ground on the ground level, and everyone else is in their seats. There's no room for mosh pitting and running around and literally being a free bird. There's none of that, right? So probably in an open environment, you'd probably have to think about it more than a closed arena.
I think they have to be like, like construction, they have norms, or there's going to have to be like, if for per capita amount of people, well, we need this many emergency vehicles and emergency teams, so if every 20,000 people, well, you need an extra 3-4 teams just in case, something happens like this.
More people on the ground. Actually, I should take that back because I was thinking about arena only, and like there's places like Olympia here in Montreal, right? Like, or like it's a bit less. Like there's mosh pits. There's some heavy hitters. Like there's some heavy stuff.
Like,
it's not like the Bell Center.
Smaller venues will.
Smaller venues, yeah. But then again, smaller venues, you see everything that's happening. 50,000 people plus. I can't imagine you spotting out. A fatality or a severe situation.
Apparently there were like emergency lights lit up at the time, but I mean, like, again, you're one guy and you see an ocean of people. It's
tough.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand both sides, because people do pass out at virtually every Travis show, and 0 of those people in his entire career have been dead. So I kind of see that perspective, but I also see the perspective that other people are saying. One more little anecdote that might help with context for this is that most music festivals, when the headliner comes on, they pick 2 big headliners, and basically the crowd will be split between 2 stages. Since this was Travis's festival, every single attendee was at that stage, and there was 1 headliner at 1 stage. So listen, many different factors, but of course the most important part of this story, everyone here at SoundMojo and WatchMojo sends their condolences to the families, and we're definitely praying for a quick recovery for them and to get to the bottom of this for sure. Coming back to Canada with a little bit of positive news, which is always nice to hear. Victoria, BC has adopted a new music strategy, which was actually adapted over in London, England, and even in America, New Orleans, to help make it one of the world-class music cities in North America. As I mentioned, this is coming off of a blueprint that was already laid out. And what they found, guys, is that the reason Victoria isn't more of a music powerhouse is because of few and far between availability to late night dining options, ride sharing was a challenge, and liquor licenses were a challenge. So it's interesting when you see it broken down. You know, people think, oh, you know, that maybe my city's not as cool, so this band doesn't come here or something like that. But really, that's not the case. It has to do with a lot of factors. And Joe, you probably know some stuff, probably more than me about this.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, if I go to, I've experienced where you go to Ottawa, which is just a 2-hour drive from here, and it's like everything is shut down by 9 p.m. You're like, well, what do people do around here, you know? So that's probably part of the situation, you know? I don't want to, I had one thought about this, and it's like, well, you know, because there's they're mentioning, you know, giving artists grants, and like you said, simplifying the liquor license, using spaces that aren't being used for events, which makes sense, or homeless people, you know, that could be a good thing too, unused buildings.
Yeah, we can think of that too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But it's for me, my one takeaway is because I'm so I love to hate on radio and FM or whatever, traditional radio. It's well, instead of playing, let's say, example, yesterday I was in my car and it's I think in 3 hours I heard the last Adele song 6 times. Right. So it's you know what? Take one of those slots and promote a local artist and give them the spotlight. And maybe, you know, things will start to pick up slowly. I mean, if the local station that has X amount of people listening to every morning stuck in traffic, and if you spotlight a local band, well, man, it might help people say, hey, let's go check these guys out. And the whole scene will eventually, you know, they'll have supporting acts come in and all that stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit of my rant to help promote a bit more of the artists, which is kind of what we're doing here with SoundMojo, where we take indie artists and we expose them to a bigger audience. And, you know, that's kind of my mission in a way, you know, instead of top 40 radio, always just playing the same songs.
The people who don't need any more promo, you know, that it's true.
I mean, it's a catch-22. I get it, right? They want advertisers, you know, but and then they complain about paying royalties to artists. But meanwhile, how much did that 30-second spot cost? A lot more than 10 cents for an artist royalty, right? So it's just
totally.
You know, come on. Put your money where your mouth is.
It's kind of like that meme where it says, it shows an unsigned artist and somebody's asking him, why haven't you made it yet? And he says, why haven't you shared my post yet? Why haven't you shared my song yet? It's the exact same thing. You know, if the music business wants independent, smaller artists to make more of a dent, they could definitely assist them with that and maybe build more of an infrastructure, which it sounds like they're doing over in Victoria. So it should be interesting.
I mean, any effort is a good effort, right, to help the scene because, if anything, I mean, a lot of the arts have suffered, but some haven't have improved, like video making with YouTube and all these streaming platforms is it's blown up, right? Whereas music, sure, it's blown up. A lot more people are making music, but how many of them are actually making money and a living doing that? A lot of it is it's like that joke, like you were saying about a meme where it's only a musician will spend $5,000 on a drum kit to put it in a $100 car to go play a $50 gig. You know?
Right.
So it's it's kind of...
Anyway. That's crazy, though. It's a good point. Sorry, Frank, I didn't know if you wanted to add something to that.
No, I think you guys covered all bases. I don't know. I know particularly on the West Coast, though, cost of living, at least in Canada, is high, right? So it must be even tougher on indie artists. And it's good that they have this kind of rallying of the troops, communal attempt at shining the light on them. So I commend them. It's good.
Yep.
Absolutely. They have a quote here from an artist who says it's hard to make ends meet in Victoria. And he's seeing a lot of people draining into Vancouver or Toronto. And the effort of this is, of course, to stop that. And I see this as a really positive thing. You know, we need those local scenes building bigger and staying strong. Let's hop over to New York in the United States. Kind of a sad story, but also a remarkable one at the same time.
I think it's more of a celebration, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards that too. Paul Stanley of Kiss has just unfortunately lost his father. His father, of course, a massive supporter of Kiss. You know, the whole band knew him when they were growing up. And he lived a healthy life of 101 years old, guys, which is just, I mean, honestly, if I could pick how I want life to go for my parents, this is what I would want, to be honest. What a life.
If it's a clean bill of health for 101 years, then hopefully, didn't have any ailing issues until then. But at the same time, if you live until 101, you're probably in good health anyway. So yeah, it's he was probably asking when is it going to happen? Jeez.
If you look at the picture he shared in the post with his dad looks great. I don't know how long ago that was. Like, is he 97 in that image, or is he like? He looks fantastic.
He looks good.
Paul looks fantastic, but his father too. So it's got to be in the genes.
That's true. I was just they
Gene
have really
Simmons.
good genes. Yeah, it's in the Paul.
Yeah, it's in the Paul genes, not the Gene Simmons. Anyway.
Honestly, no, and it appears that the cause of death was natural causes. There hasn't been another cause of death listed, but just definitely something that I see also as a celebration, Frank. And to live that long of a prosperous life, get to see your son's success like that, see the way he's impacted people, that's a big thing. So rest in peace to Paul's father, and of course, sending some more condolences from the team right here to the entire family. We know he was well loved. So now we're going to move into
what are we going to do on this day or trivia? Where are we going here?
Maybe a little bit of trivia.
Okay, let's
I know
hit
the viewers
trivia.
love to watch us struggle through this trivia here. It's probably their favorite part.
Yeah. So this week's my turn with the questions. I think they're really simple, and there's only 2 multiple choice. So
My fingers are crossed under the table. Please be simple.
Yeah. All right. So which rock star moonlights as a horror movie writer and director? No multiple choice.
So which rock star?
Yeah.
Repeat it.
Okay, sorry. Which rock star moonlights as a horror movie writer and director?
I've never heard that term, moonlights.
Well, besides being in
does
who
it
this
also?
person is, he also does direct some I can maybe tell you House of 1,000 Corpses is one of the movies.
I already knew it. Rob Zombie.
There you go.
Okay.
I didn't want to make it that easy.
I guess I should have made it a little bit more multiple choicey. Okay, well, this one is. Which movie is Justin Timberlake's Can't Stop the Feeling from? 1. Suicide Squad, Perfect Pitch 2, Trolls, or is it Zootopia? Yeah, Zootopia. So Justin Timberlake's, that's a massive song in a couple of years back there. Can't Stop This Feeling, Can't Stop the Feeling. So Suicide Squad, Perfect Pitch 2, Trolls, or Zootopia. Now this is not in the 90s. This is just 2-3 years ago, so I kept it a little more relevant.
Well, Suicide Squad, you said, is one of the options?
Suicide Squad.
That was a couple years ago.
Perfect Pitch 2 was a couple years ago. Trolls and Zootopia.
No, I don't. If I were to guess, I can't even play the song in my head right now. I'm awful with this stuff. I don't even know what it sounds like.
I'm not gonna attempt to sing it.
Yeah, I don't. It's all right. I guess I'll go with Suicide Squad.
Okay, I'm going to go, and I think I might be playing myself with this answer because it might be a misdirected answer, but Trolls.
Bingo, Trolls it is.
Bam. Okay, only because I knew the other song he did from Trolls. So I was like, maybe it's a trick question because he did another one. I didn't know. So, okay.
Yeah. All right, here's another easy one. Maybe Cassius, you can give Frank a moment here.
Okay.
To try to get this one because I figure you might get it. Who was the first lead guitarist of Metallica?
Yeah. No clue.
I feel bad. I kind of knew Frank might not have gotten that
No clue.
one. So
No
go for
clue.
it.
Dave Mustaine.
Et voila. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. Gotta get your medal, Frank. Gotta get your medal.
Okay.
All right. Another multiple choice one. What is The Police's Every Breath You Take, the song, about? A, murder. B, kidnapping. C, stalking. Or D, sexual assault. Remember, it's
I
such
thought
a
it was
nice
about
little-
breathing.
There you go. Every breath you
This
take.
is
It's a nice
terrible.
ballad, massive hit. Probably filled up Sting's portfolio, at least 60% of his portfolio. That one.
I think
song.
is it stalking?
It's got to be stalking.
You are both correct.
Okay.
Stalking
Okay,
it is.
wow. That is so
There you go.
creepy.
I know.
Well,
Now you're gonna hear
that's
the
think
song
of
in
it.
a
like
different
every breath
way,
you
right?
take. I mean, if you just base it
Every-
off that lyric, it could have been
every
any one of
move
those
you
options.
make,
Then every
every-
move you make, every step
everything.
you take.
Take.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
Sting
right.
is a
Watching.
creepy guy.
I'll be watching you.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know, it's really creepy. Imagine all the people that dance to that as their wedding song and thinking it's such a nice song. I mean, well, it's all about stalking.
The roots of this song is not what you expect. All right.
All
Oh
right.
my gosh.
Last but not least, and I hope I give Frank a home run here. John
Okay.
Mayer wrote a song about the law of physics. Do you know what the title of that song is?
Interesting.
John Mayer wrote a song.
Do you know this one, Cassius?
About
No,
which law?
you're the John Mayer guy. You taught me about John Mayer.
So John Mayer wrote a song about which law of physics? There you go. Better.
Oh, okay. Well, that one's easier.
Yeah.
Gravity.
So, there you go. Gravity.
Okay, right. Yeah, okay. See, that's a good one. I didn't know that one.
So I wasn't tallying up the scores, so I don't know. Was it 2-2?
Frank's got 2. I think I got 3.
Yeah,
There
I
you
think
go.
you got you got the movie one. You got the Dave Mustaine, and then another one. I can't remember.
And the
I
Rob
think I got
Zombie.
4. Yeah,
Oh,
something
But the
like
Rob
that.
Zombie, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And the Stalking.
Hey.
Yeah, I think you got 4, man. You got all.
I think
4
I
out of
redeemed
5.
myself from the last couple times because the last couple times was not easy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So we should do that. Either
Last
the
couple
we should
times
come
for
up
me
with
was a bloodbath.
Yeah, we should come up with a system of like the loser either gets the next week to try to get back, or the winner gets the next week. So we'll decide that.
I'll take care of it next week. I'll take care of it next week.
Okay, you're gonna get us good next week.
I'm good at speaking. I'm good at talking, reading out things that are on a screen, not guessing from my own head. So let's go.
So now it looks like we have some on this day.
It's my turn now. I was gonna check out. It's my turn. Okay, on this day. Here we go, boys. All right, so the 12th of November today, 1990. Rolling Stone Ronnie Wood broke both his legs after his car crashed on the M4 motorway near Marlborough, Wiltshire, England. Wiltshire. Wood was trying to wave other cars past him when he was run over.
What?
Crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh, I never heard about this. That's weird. So he broke both of his legs. I wonder how long it took him to rehab from that.
Oof, probably a long time. I mean, how is Ronnie Wood still with us? Is he still?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still in the band.
Come on. Yeah, he's still around. So he must have been, 1990. Must be. Anyways, yeah, pretty devastating. Both of his legs there. Not good luck for Ronnie. 12th of November, 2001. The 3 living former Beatles met for the last time at George Harrison's hotel in New York City for lunch. Harrison died 2 weeks later at a friend's home in Los Angeles on the 29th of November, 2001, age 58.
I remember that day.
Did he have cancer? I think he did, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not
Wow.
sure,
So he died at a friend's home. I guess. Anyways, I guess it's a strange place to pass on. I guess he wasn't. Do we know the backstory to Harrison? Was he
not by heart?
Maybe
sure.
he was sick and maybe getting taken care of. That's the only thing I could sort of guess.
Same here. That's what I was concluding.
Or
but
maybe he just said, "Screw it. I'm just gonna live my life, not receive treatment, and die when I die." I don't know.
yeah.
It's possible.
At a friend's house. I don't know. It's weird. Okay, last one. Who am I to judge? Look, 12th of November, 2014. Now this one's interesting because we've spoken about this topic before and this individual. After a high-profile move by Taylor Swift to pull her entire back catalog from the song streaming service Spotify, 2014, their chief executive Daniel Ek, who's still their chief executive, defended its business model, saying it has paid out $2 billion to the music industry to that date of 2014. And obviously, both Taylor Swift and Spotify have grown leaps and bounds since 2014. Pretty interesting to see, to have a little flashback there.
He's like, we made $1 trillion, but we paid $2 billion, so it's fair.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like they always never made a profit, but they're all like 6-figure salaries. The rumor, is that these guys are all getting 6-figure salaries. But I mean, it's true that like it did help the music labels, the record labels, that helped them with the streaming and like all that stuff. So it definitely made them, in the last couple of years, like they've come back stronger, the labels and stuff. But kudos to her. We've said it many times on this podcast. Well, I maybe have said it many times, but I mean, she put her foot down, and whether or not it worked at this point, but it worked with Apple a few years later when they were trying to, they would give people 3 months free Apple Music, and then like, so you could use it for free, stream as much as you want, and then, but they weren't paying those royalties that people were streaming. They weren't going to pay them to the artist, and it's like, well, what the hell is that? Like you're still using our music to get people to subscribe to your service. So she put her foot down. She threatened to take the music out, and Apple said, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah, we like that. We like that boldness, right? 2014. I mean, Taylor Swift was still very popular and in the mainstream in 2014. But she put her foot down. She said, "Hey, enough's enough, and I'm not going to be part of that." So that's it. And it worked out.
Yep.
I tip my hat to her, honestly. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It's tough to take on a big service, and Taylor Swift may be one of the only artists who could have gotten away with that. You have to be really at a really high caliber. So shout out to Taylor Swift. I know we've commended her work ethic on the show.
Yeah.
So now we're going to jump into the interview portion of this episode. As we mentioned off the top, we have the co-founder of The Source magazine, Dave Mays, joining us today. Any 90s hip-hop heads, whether you listen to Biggie, whether you listen to Deathrow, East, West, whatever it was, you know The Source. And this is a really cool opportunity to hear about the backstory of this, how it came about, how the Source Awards got so crazy, and everything else you want to hear. There was no stone left unturned during this. And when we come back, we'll have a few takeaways.
And she loves to show me off, of course. Smiles every time my face is up in the Source. We used to fuss when the landlord dissed us. No heat, wonder why Christmas missed us. Birthdays was the worst days. Now we sip champagne when we thirsty. Damn right I like the life I live. Cause I went from negative to positive and it's all.
How you doing, Cassius?
Yeah, pleasure to connect, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
100%. So I know it's a big time for you, obviously, with the launch of Breakbeat. Maybe a good starting point to let people know what exactly is the main focus of operations over at Breakbeat right now.
Sure. Well, the first thing we're doing is a podcast network. It's the Breakbeat Podcast Network. So it's a podcast network that's built specifically for the hip hop community. We want to represent the hip hop community's point of view and perspective across a comprehensive range of subjects and topics. And we're doing that by highlighting different voices and talent through different shows. And also creating more of the scripted, more highly produced type of podcasts that really have driven the growth of the podcast industry in a lot of ways the past 5 years or so. So we're doing like audio documentary series. We've got a couple of big ones in the works on that right now. And then we have a show like the one that dropped today, which is called Culturati. And it's the type of thing like it's more like a NPR level type of, podcast, but with a hip hop, flavor and style all over it. And that's really what we're trying to do, is just bring the hip hop sensibility fully into the world of podcasting right now.
So was that a big thing for you consciously, like wanting to take the hip hop culture, but take it maybe to a place that it's never been in terms of a format?
Yeah, I mean, it's been there in the past, I could say, with, in some ways what I'm trying to do is recreate, what the Source magazine and the role it played in hip hop, back in the days, but it's definitely not being done now. And, it's a totally different world. So, podcasting and, really was the entry point that made the most sense, because it's such a fast growing, dynamic industry. And a podcast network is in a lot of ways, a digital magazine, which is a term people have used for 20 years, but it's never really stuck. Like, nobody reads some digital magazine every week or whatever. But a podcast network kind of can be that, because, you have a lot of different shows about different subject matters, different types of hosts, different formats. And it's kind of like how you would flip through a magazine and you would get, your fashion, and then you would get your sports, and then you would get your, your politics and, so on, but all with that hip hop kind of style and point of view that's going to resonate with the hip hop community. Because I think, as big as hip hop is, and as much as it's all over the place, I think we still don't have that platform that really represents our points of view across, such a much more comprehensive set of subjects.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thinking about your experience, because you have so much, are you drawing it all from your experience in the radio days, or does this remind you at all of those sort of times? It must be somewhat similar to the radio now coming into podcasting.
Sure. Well, I was, really only in radio for a very short time. That's how I got my start kind of in college as a college radio host. for 4 years. But magazines obviously is magazines, television are the areas that I thrived in for many years after that. It's a new, different world. So you got to take a different approach. So there are similarities, and there are things that I learned, from the years at the source that absolutely are being applied now. I mean, just, when I talk about discovering new talent, the source, one of the most legendary columns in the source was the unsigned hype column. That was the column where we reviewed an unsigned rapper's demo tape every month. So through that column, we discovered Biggie, we discovered DMX, we discovered Eminem, we discovered Mobb Deep, Common, Capone and Noriega, Jay Electronica, all these people before they ever got signed and had record deals. And we helped a lot of them actually get their first record deals. That's something that I'm trying to recreate with Breakbeat. So, I have like 2 shows right now that I would describe these hosts as kind of like my unsigned hypes of Breakbeat. So that would be, Don't Call Me White Girl, who's our first podcast we released last week. She's a hilarious and really smart young woman out of Philly, who's just incredibly interesting and entertaining to watch and listen to. I think she's going to be a superstar. She's already got a really, loyal following, but I think we can take her to another level. And then same kind of thing with my guy, Funny Marco. A lot of us have been following Funny Marco on Instagram for the past few years and watching all the funny skits and pranks and things that he's done, to build up this following. And but I just think he has, just a really special comedic talent and sense that can be brought into the podcast world and help take his career to another level as well. So those are some of the parallels there that I'm seeing is being able to empower and discover new talent and new voices as well.
No, man. I mean, and you have so much experience when it comes to the talent discovery also, like you just mentioned. I mean, so many people brought to the mainstream from the source. Is there anything that maybe you could point across the board you see in new talent that really makes you interested in that person? Or is it always a different thing that you notice in each talent?
I just think it's just an instinct. You just watch somebody or listen to somebody and you can see that kind of special, engaging aspects that they have and just what makes them stand out. So it's different, but it's similar because I get that same kind of feeling right away when I see someone that's, oh man. And, that's the instinct that created the source. That's the instinct that defined the source for many years was, it was about discovering and promoting and putting on things that were dope or things that were hot, whatever they might be. We want to be the first to let you know about this new pair of sneakers, the first to let you know about, this new artist or whatever, the case may be. And we just, we were passionate about it. We loved hip hop. And that's what came first. It wasn't about, what big company was backing you or not. You could be big, small, whatever. You have an opportunity with the source that people really came to know that about us. And so I want people to have that same feeling about Breakbeat, that it's a place where, there'll be some big names involved, but also it's a place where you can discover new folks that you're gonna like most likely.
Yeah, 100%. I think back to the source when it started as a newsletter. Is that correct?
It did, yeah. It started while I was in college. I went to Harvard. This is in the late 1980s. I'm an undergrad, started my radio show, and the source was created as a newsletter for listeners to the radio show throughout the Boston area. So my listeners weren't Harvard students. They were, hip hop fans all around Boston that were dying to hear the latest new hip hop and find out any information they could. And, as I would talk to the listeners, they would call in and, they would always ask questions about, when's the new, Boogie Down Productions album coming out, or, who produced that Big Daddy Kane song and who's that featured on there, or, this type of stuff. We were just thirsty for information, and there was nowhere to find this information. And I was building a little, set of relationships with the record companies, all the big hip hop labels in the 80s, the Tommy Boy Records, the Jive Records, the Def Jam Records, Profile, all these labels that were the biggest labels for hip hop in that early stage. And so I would get information just from talking to the reps at these companies, and I'd be able to share that to people, listeners on my show. And that just kind of sparked the idea to create the newsletter, sell ads on the back of the newsletter to local businesses. And, then I read a book about Rolling Stone magazine shortly after the first newsletter of The Source came out. And I learned all about Rolling Stone, which I knew nothing about, how it was started by this young dude named Jan Wenner in the late 60s, and kind of as an underground newspaper, and it became the voice of the rock and roll generation. And, I saw that as the same thing I could do for hip hop, but I always believed hip hop would be bigger than rock and roll, because, rock, was a music like hip hop that was created primarily by African Americans. But the difference was with rock, a lot of people don't even know that Black people created rock music. But it was kind of, co-opted through the likes of Elvis and the Beatles and things like that. And rock became white music for many, many, many years primarily. And but hip hop didn't have that same, evolution. The artists that created it were the ones that were becoming the mainstream superstars, the Run DMCs that were selling, 10 million records, and NWA and, Snoop, and as, just went on and on. So I always believed that hip hop would be bigger than rock, because hip hop crossed over every boundary and unified people. I feel like hip hop is, the most unifying force in the world in terms of its ability to bring people together from different backgrounds, whether you're rich, poor, whether you're, white, Black, Chinese, whether you're, from Europe or Africa or, Japan, whatever. Hip hop has a way of crossing all these boundaries and reaching people and bringing together people that tend to think about the world in a similar way. Hip hop culture imparts a sort of way of thinking about things that I feel is unique. And so, yeah, that's the plan.
Do you feel like hip hop culture today is more inclusive? Because I mean, there's so many. It's almost like the racial aspect has faded away in a lot of segments of hip hop, and I'm curious how you feel about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always been inclusive. It's always been inclusive. That's one thing people should know about hip hop. It was created by, Black folks and, some Puerto Ricans and Spanish folks in New York City in the very beginning in the 70s, already. But, hip hop has been a culture that has been open to people of all races and backgrounds. It's really, just about your spirit. It's about, your passion and authenticity, no matter who you are. If you're real, most, hip hop will accept you. And so I think that's always been there. I think it's more amplified now because hip hop is, so its imprint is all over everything in the world around us. It's you can find it in politics, you can find it in, education, you can find it in, sports, you can find it in, there's nowhere you can look now and not see or feel the imprint of hip hop on those areas. So I just think that's a big part of it today, is it's just so much more prevalent throughout everything in our society. And yeah, it's still a culture that, in my opinion, is a culture that, was created out of the struggle and the hardships and the pain of people that have grown up under systemic racism in this country and created the kind of, generational poverty that still exists to this day. And in some ways, it's disappointing to me, that hip hop has become this multi-billion-dollar industry. But, the problems that are going on with poverty and the disadvantaged communities, across America, in every major city and smaller cities persist and haven't changed. The stuff we've seen with the Black Lives Matter movement the last 5-6 years. I mean, this is stuff that, of course, hip hop was talking about in the 80s and the 90s. And, in a lot of ways, things haven't changed for the better. They've only gotten worse for a lot of those communities. So that's a part of things that I hope to also be a influence in changing, is helping to direct more resources from hip hop into these communities, and also helping to promote that kind of thought process that, while hip hop is open to anyone of any race, any background, and you should feel, if it's something you're passionate about, you should feel, comfortable doing that. But I think also if you're not, somebody that's grown up and dealt with, the terrible, effects of systemic racism on your life, your family's lives, your friends' lives, then, you do sort of have an obligation to kind of understand that and do what you can to be a part of that kind of movement and doing things about that. So I think that should come with everyone's involvement in hip hop, just because of the origins of hip hop and where it comes from, and still a lot of the lifeblood and the energy of hip hop still does come from these communities.
No, I think that's a very valid point. That's really where it stems from. And it's all about showing that appreciation to where an art form stems from, and showing that you respect the culture. So I totally get that. So we're talking about the Source when it's first starting as a newsletter. What do you feel like was the element that made the Source from a newsletter to the next level, to like a household name in the culture? Did you feel that moment?
I think it evolved over time. I mean, I've been asked that, like, was there ever this one point where you finally, felt like you made it, that type of thing? For me, I was always somebody that was, looking at the future and having a vision that kept growing and growing. So, it went from the Rolling Stone of hip hop to, a few years later, I would say I'm building the Time Warner of hip hop. And back in those days, Time Warner was this huge conglomerate that not only had tons of magazines, but they had movies and TV shows and all kinds of other things they were into. And that was kind of the model when I started getting into the Source Awards and television shows and things like that.
Came straight about the critter, saved from hell. I'm a thug, I was raised in jail. Now I'm out on bail. To my niggas in the back, we out on bail. To my niggas in the front, we out on bail. To my niggas in the back, we out on bail. To my niggas in the front, we out on bail. To my niggas in the back, we out on bail. To my niggas in the front, we out on bail. To my niggas in the back, we out on bail. To my niggas in the front, yo, stuck in jail.
So you mentioned the awards. I saw you put up a repost about the '94 Source Awards. I mean, man, you must have so many crazy memories from that period of time.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Source Awards was legendary. We did 7 big Source Awards over the years. And yeah, the post today was Bill Bellamy talking about the very first big Source Awards in '94. It wasn't televised. There's a couple little clips of footage that float around on the internet, like of Tupac's performance there. Incredible night. And this was the first time that the whole hip hop community, all the labels, all the executives, the artists, everybody from all the big, labels around the country came together, in a real, professional award setting. And back then, hip hop didn't get that kind of respect, so it meant a lot to all of us to be able to have our own, home and like that. So there was, that first one, I can just remember just the excitement, and you can find footage of people that were there talking about, Russell Simmons or, Latifah and all these different people that were there at the first Source Awards, Run DMC, so on. So, and it just evolved. It became one of the biggest television shows in the history of ratings in terms of, bringing hip hop into network television and, incredible, moments and memories. It was like the Super Bowl of hip hop. It was the thing everybody looked forward to every year. Again, a place where, I could bring all the different people together and do something to recognize ourselves and the culture and the creativity. Because another thing was, the mainstream didn't think hip hop involved talent. They just thought, oh, you're just rapping, there's no talent in rapping.
Yeah, rapper's not really a compliment of a word.
Right. It wasn't thought of as an art form, or poetry, and same thing with producing. Oh, you guys are just sampling stuff. There's no skill involved in, producing. And, we knew people that were younger that were into hip hop in those days. We knew how much excitement and energy and talent and creativity was involved in creating this culture. And we just wanted to find a way to recognize that at a time when, we weren't being recognized at all.
One thing I wonder about the Source Awards, and I think I might know the answer to this, but obviously good to get your perspective. How real was some of this beef when the cameras weren't on, like backstage? Was the Bad Boy Deathrow stuff really boiling over? Or was there any element of that might have been put on for the camera by these artists? Because I've heard that Pac sometimes had like two sides of him, one when there was a camera and one when there wasn't.
I mean, it was, everything was pretty real. I mean, there was, as far as that night, the 95 awards, I mean, yeah, there was definitely tension, after Suge went on stage and said what he said. And, one thing kind of followed another. But, of course, Snoop did an incredible job of just, passionately kind of talking to the audience and helping to diffuse things. And Puff, took the kind of high road and didn't choose to kind of respond directly after that. And for me, it obviously was crazy because I was, running around. I was in the back of the theater, I think, when it first happened. And, people, obviously, this is 5,000 people, majority from New York, that had, purchased tickets to be there. The front of the theater was where all the industry and the artists and people we had invited were gathered. And, Suge was there. He had a lot of guys with him there. He was by far the deepest crew in the building. He probably had 60, 70 guys with him. And so I think he felt, confident that he could get away with, what he was saying and, wouldn't have any consequences. But again, fortunately, I was able to talk to everybody, calm everybody down, and the show went on. We didn't have any punches thrown that night. There was nobody shot, stabbed, nothing crazy like that. It was this historic night. I mean, that's one of the most pivotal, moments in the history of hip hop, that 95 Source Awards.
How did it feel for you when you heard Biggie shout you out in Juicy? Because obviously you guys broke him, but did you expect him to show that level of appreciation in a hit?
Yeah, that was huge, man. That was huge. I can just remember the first time I heard Juicy playing on the radio and heard the Source mention it. Those are one of those few moments where I really would stop and be like, man, this is dope. You know what I mean? Like, I was really happy. I didn't do that very much. Like I was saying earlier, like I'm always focused. I'm always trying to get to the next level and keep building and going on. So I don't take the time to do that. But that was one of those moments where I just had to stop and be like, man, this is really awesome. And, it's one of the greatest hip hop songs of all time. And the Source is forever, part of that song. And so, that was big in the video with his mom holding the magazine up and everything as well.
Crazy.
So, rest in peace to Big.
100%. Obviously, in most people's top 5, if not, top 2, looking at the guys of today, do you feel like any of these dudes are going to have the same legacy and impact as, say, a Tupac, a Biggie, or are those guys set in stone forever?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I think, I think there are some artists that, have the potential to have legacies that will live on, like Biggs and Tupac. I mean, Drake, of course, has accomplished incredible things, and, he's done it differently than Big or Tupac. But I think his imprint is, undeniable and, going to be there for a long time. And, Nipsey Hussle is somebody that comes to mind. I mean, had he not, tragically been taken from us at the young age that he was, I think he had, a lot more to offer, but he had an incredible body of work that, that's still out here today. And I think, will live for a long time, in that same echelon of artists. And there's a few others that I think, could get into that lane.
No, I would totally agree. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to get your take on a couple current events in hip hop. We saw that Jay Prince has gotten together with Kanye in terms of the Larry Hoover situation, and it looks like Drake is going to be involved in some sort of reunion. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Oh man, that's huge, huge, so powerful, man. I mean, and Jay is, he's just such a special person and someone, one of the only people that can make things like this happen. I mean, and it's just exciting to think about Drake and Kanye coming together to really help get Larry Hoover released. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I mean, we're doing a 10-part series on Larry Hoover's life on Breakbeat. I don't know if I mentioned that to you yet, but that's one of our docuseries that we're already producing that's going to be amazing. So, for them to be able to come together and kind of squash whatever beef that they've got going on in the name of Larry Hoover is historic. So I'm really looking forward to how that develops and getting Larry Hoover out. Bottom line, he deserves to be out with his family. And I believe that he could have a positive impact out here today on helping things, certainly in Chicago, as well as other cities, like I was talking about before. They're not any better than they were, 25 years ago at all. If anything, they're worse. And, the law enforcement and media predicted that, taking Larry Hoover off the streets was going to, be the answer to solving all these problems. And clearly that wasn't the case. I mean, I think of Hoover as a political prisoner. He's the only kind of Black street organization leader ever to, go into politics and to promote, using politics as a means to, bring about change in the inner city communities. And I think when he got serious about that, as he had redefined Gangster Disciples to growth and development in the 80s. And I mean, people don't know. I mean, he's turned around the lives of tens of thousands of people, young men and women that were, either went to jail or were heading down a path of criminal activities and being in jail, and learn the teachings of Larry Hoover and growth and development and totally changed their lives. And today are, making incredible contributions to society because of him. And people don't know how much influence and impact he had. They just see the kind of glorified criminal side of Larry Hoover, but they don't know, the true story behind it all. So yeah, I'm really excited about all that.
Man, that's really interesting for sure. And speaking of Kanye, you attended one of the Donda release events at the stadium there, I think Soldier Field. What exactly was that experience like, and what did you make of the whole rollout? Because it was super unorthodox how he did this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kanye did what he does. I mean, he's, extremely creative and innovative when it comes to marketing himself and his music. So I think he did a phenomenal job of, creating a lot of different, interesting ways to get people's attention. Obviously, it involves some controversial elements to it. But that's Kanye, as far as pushing the envelope on things. So I had a great time that night. I was blown away. It was super impactful and just exciting event to be a part of. So yeah, for sure.
Man, that's awesome. And listen, I really appreciate you taking the time today. We're excited about Breakbeat. It kind of sounds like if the Source was founded today, this is sort of more so what it would have been like. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's awesome stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And I look forward to, people checking out all of the Breakbeat content and shows and giving us feedback. And hopefully you're going to find a nice collection of really interesting, diverse things that you'll enjoy. And, I see Breakbeat growing to become hopefully something that is bigger than the Source ever was, and that we can really kind of pool these resources and unify this hip hop community across, Generation X, millennials, Gen Zs, and see, the common threads that really connect us and empower the community to help make change in the world. And I think, hip hop has done that already, but I think it has a lot more to offer. So I want to be a part of that. And I'm hoping myself and Breakbeat will be a part of that.
Moving it forward. Dave Mays, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me on the show.
Cause I went from negative to positive, and it's all. And if you don't know, now you know, nigga.
Big shout out to Dave Mays for joining us on Innersleeve this week. A blast from the past, man. The 90s hip hop era, something that I was an infant for the end of, and definitely, a time period that's always really, really interested me. I don't know if you guys had any big takeaways from this episode, but for me, really, it just seems like this was a cunning guy who put himself in the right place at the right time. Just a guy who it seems like the wheels were always turning, and he was always trying to put the pieces together, and he made it happen.
Yeah, like one thing I'll say from listening back to him is, like, I don't know Dave Mays' career and story all that well, but from the talk you had with him, you can tell that he has like that entrepreneurial business mind to him. Like he can take that step back and assess talent and be a spokesperson for his new initiative. Like, I don't know, he's got that boss vibe, that higher level. I don't know. I just felt like that discussion you had with him, it was a telling sign. He knows how to run some things.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly,
he must have some crazy stories, man. I'd love to share a beer with him or something, and just like hear some of those stories, And like, I mean, he was I think at that point, right? Like, is it safe to say that they're like The Source, Rolling Stone, sort of similar magazines for that genre, right?
For hip hop, absolutely. It was Double XL and The Source always, and I think Double XL copied them. So,
and like they were at the pinnacle, I think, of hip hop, because I think that was like the golden era, I'd say, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if I can venture that kind of a statement, but like, it's pretty cool. It's interesting. I loved what he had to say, and like you said, Frank, very entrepreneurial, right place at the right time, but also, I mean, right place at the right time sounds a little luck, but there's so much, like, you got to know what to do when you're there at that time, and who and make things move. And obviously, like, he started in college, so it's crazy. It's crazy to see where, this is what I love about doing this show, and like, is seeing how any of us could have been there. It's like, it's college. It's very simple. Starts as a very innocent thing and then just takes off like a flame on its own, right? So it was interesting to hear it
breaking
from
artists like Biggie. I'm pretty sure they were the first big review for Kanye West. I mean, huge.
Yeah. No, it was great.
It's unbelievable. And it's really cool to see somebody who's constantly looking for that next opportunity in business and really has that business mind to believe in something that doesn't even exist at the time, and only they believe in it first, and then to make it happen. And, Suge Knight, I got to tell you guys, that guy scares the hell out of me. If he pulled up to my event with 80 people, I'd just give him the keys and say it's yours. I mean, what are you supposed to do with a guy like that?
Yeah, that's the part that's like, I don't understand, like how the rivalry existed, and it's, rock is one rivalry, but it's mostly words, it's not hurtful, whereas this is some serious stuff, man. Obviously we know, like, it's, I'd love to know what really went down and all of that stuff.
Seriously, these are the public stories. Imagine the stories we haven't heard. It's really insane and next level. But again, we appreciate Dave for joining us, and make sure to go check him out at Breakbeat. He's got a bunch of new shows, and if you're a hip hop head and you're watching SoundMojo, you should be watching that as well. And speaking of watching SoundMojo, we appreciate you guys doing that today. If you enjoyed what you saw in this episode, please make sure to subscribe. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Click the subscribe button with the notification bell to get real-time updates. And we have community tabs, polls, basically any way we can find out what you guys want to hear, we will do that. And we do listen to you guys' suggestions. So let us know what you want to see and hear on the program. We're also on social media at SoundMojo on pretty much every platform you could think of. And we have merchandise. Frank, are you wearing the hoodie now, or is that something different?
Oh,
there he is.
Of course, always.
The
always
man himself representing. So if you want something for the winter season coming up, it's going to be cold, as we mentioned most episodes. Hoodies, crew necks, basically anything you can think of. And we have all that information in the description of this program right here. So thanks so much for tuning in to SoundMojo's Innersleeve. We'll catch you guys next week.